Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to my video on the advantages and disadvantages of group counseling and of co-facilitation in group counseling. So I want to start by saying that I believe that the benefits of group counseling outweigh the disadvantages of group counseling. And similarly, the benefits of co-facilitation outweigh the disadvantages of co-facilitation. However, it is important we acknowledge both the potential good that can come from group counseling experiences for clients and the potential risks that group members are exposed to. So I'm going to start with the advantages or benefits of group counseling. Group counseling environments create a microcosm of the client's environments. And that is really, in my opinion, one of the great strengths of group counseling. In a group, clients are seated, typically, with other people, and at some level encouraged to interact with them. And in the outside world, in the world outside of group members have to do the same thing. They typically go to work, have to interact with family members, friends. So this safe and professionally facilitated microcosm is an important dynamic in group counseling. Groups normalize experiences. So if a client has had, say, depression for most of his life, and he comes to a group and he sees a number of other people that have had the same or very similar experiences in terms of depressive symptoms, that normalizes his experiences. So a group member in that situation would now be less likely to see himself as abnormal, but rather he would gain an understanding that other people really do have depression just like he does, and that gives him hope that that depression can be resolved. Group members can see how others view them. This is another crucial benefit of group counseling. Oftentimes in the social world outside of a group, a client will not get direct and honest feedback about how they're viewed. If their behavior is attracting negative attention, it won't always be obvious to a group member that that's occurring. But in the group counseling setting, sometimes for the first time, group members can really get an idea of how they're perceived by others, and therefore make plans to change accordingly. Family issues can be addressed through group dynamics. Again, another key feature of the group counseling process. Groups can simulate family dynamics, and group members can work through past family issues in the here and now, in the group, because of that dynamic. So clients with family issues who would otherwise have no real way to see any type of resolution can find some peace and some resolution through group processes. In groups, several perspectives are available, and that's valuable. That kind of ties into the group member being able to see himself how others can see him or do see him. The multiple perspectives give clients a look at themselves and others in a way that otherwise they would not have had access to. Group members can test behaviors in the safety of a group. So perhaps a group member is reluctant to complement other people. Say that's a weakness for a particular group member. And in the world outside of group, she struggles to pay compliments to people, to make good eye contact, to smile. So that, in the outside world, that's scary. In a group, she could try those behaviors out. She could make eye contact, smile, and pay other group members compliments inside the safety of that group, and she can see what the consequences, most likely there'll be positive consequences, but see what the consequences of that behavior will be before attempting that behavior or those behaviors outside of the group. There are also some logistical advantages of group counseling when comparing group counseling to individual counseling. The first is lower cost. And I believe it is important as mental health counselors that we acknowledge the realities of financial concerns and how those concerns impact or can potentially impact client care. Also logistically, compared to individual counseling, group counseling allows for a more efficient use of counselor time and talent. If a counselor were to work straight through and see, say, 7 clients in a day individually, that would be 7 hours roughly, plus, say, lunch, so approximately an 8-hour day. In that same time, that counselor could facilitate 2 groups, say an hour and a half each, plus an hour for group notes for each group, so that'd be 5 hours total, and then say an hour for lunch, and still have 2 hours left over. And furthermore, in those 6 hours, as opposed to the 8 hours consumed with individual counseling, the counselor could treat potentially 16 to 20 clients as opposed to just the 7. Now, it's worth noting that some of that efficiency would be lost in a co-facilitation environment, but I'll discuss that in a few minutes. So moving on to the disadvantages of group counseling. One of the key disadvantages of the group counseling environment is, as mental health counselors, we really do not have the ability to assure clients that their confidentiality will be maintained. Of course, as a mental health counselor, we will maintain their confidentiality, but what the other group members will do, we just don't know. Of course, we would ask group members, and we would do this repeatedly throughout a group, to maintain the confidentiality, but they're under no obligation to do so. Another disadvantage is, again, compared to individual counseling, is that in a group environment, each client would receive less personal attention. It should be noted that not all clients are appropriate for groups. Some because of the nature and severity of their condition, and some because they do not want to participate in groups. There is the potential for members to become scapegoats in the group. A good facilitator can prevent this from happening in the vast majority of cases. Also, members may feel pressured to conform to the norms of the group and to self-disclose. Even though as group facilitators we typically think of self-disclosure as something positive, it's not positive if a member is feeling pressured or forced to do so. Group facilitators are not always adequately trained. As mental health counselors and as counselor educators, we acknowledge that group facilitation skills are distinct from individual counseling skills, although of course there is some overlap. But unfortunately, there are a good number of group facilitators in the counseling field that really do not have the appropriate training for the types of groups that they are asked to run. This is a systemic problem that I'm certain does have a solution, but currently a lack of quality training for group facilitators is a significant disadvantage of group counseling. And finally, organizing a group can be difficult. For example, scheduling at a time where it's convenient for all the members of the group or a majority of the members, selecting a location that has the proper attributes that would need to hold the group and to provide for their needs, and then of course attendance, which to some extent is a product of the scheduling and location. Is the scheduling designed to facilitate attendance? Is the location convenient so the group members can get to the group on time? Also, constructing the curriculum for a group, if it's a type of group that requires curriculum, can be a daunting task, as it has to be accurate and useful, but also engaging for the clients. So now I want to move on to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of co-facilitation. So co-facilitation is a popular strategy where two mental health counselors facilitate a group. And there are some clear benefits to this practice and a few disadvantages, which I'll talk about. On the benefits side, co-facilitators can model helpful communication styles between each other, and they can also model how to deal with conflict in an open and productive way. When a counselor is facilitating a group alone, a lot of the times they have to wait for an opportunity to demonstrate a useful communication style or a useful way to deal with conflict. When a co-facilitator is present, they can make that opportunity happen whenever they want, or whenever the group needs it. With co-facilitation, we have increased diversity, increased expertise, because you have two facilitators instead of one, and more perspective, all of which is helpful and contributes to a positive group experience. With co-facilitation, a division of responsibilities is possible. So for example, one facilitator could be very focused on the here and now experience, while the other facilitator tries to find background themes, larger themes that are occurring in the group. One facilitator can conduct both of these functions simultaneously, but obviously that's more difficult than if you have that ability to divide responsibilities across two facilitators. Co-facilitation allows for training and supervision opportunities. When we think of co-facilitation, we tend to think of two equals. So two licensed counselors, for example, that are running a group. But sometimes there is a power differential, and one of the facilitators is a supervisor, and the other one is a supervisee. And this is a great opportunity to reap some of the benefits of co-facilitation while simultaneously having a supervision and training experience available. And finally, just logistically speaking, it's less likely that a group would be canceled, because say if a facilitator can't get to the group and they're the only one running the group, it is likely the group would be canceled unless the agency could find someone else to fill in. When there are two facilitators, it would be relatively unlikely that both would be unavailable to attend the group and to facilitate it. That may seem like a relatively minor benefit, but it's a significant disruption to a group when the group has to be canceled from the agency side. So moving on to the disadvantages of co-facilitation. Well, co-facilitators must work well together, and that's not always the case. If facilitation styles conflict, members may be confused, and group dynamics may be interrupted. And these facilitation styles can conflict at many levels, including if one facilitator subscribes to one particular theoretical orientation and the other facilitator subscribes to another theoretical orientation, and these two orientations don't work well together. If there is a power differential, as I mentioned in the previous slide, where there'd be a supervisor and a supervisee, there must be an agreement as to who is in charge. A power struggle between facilitators will not contribute to a smooth running and productive group. When you have co-facilitation, you have an increased risk that group members will not challenge one of the facilitators because they're worried about the other facilitator teaming up with them. With co-facilitation, competition between co-facilitators can develop and is not useful to a productive group process. And of course, when you have co-facilitation, the costs increase. So in comparing group to individual counseling, it's still more cost efficient even with co-facilitation. So as you can see, a number of the items on this slide, like the co-facilitators working well together and not allowing their styles to conflict, and the competition between co-facilitators, as well as the power differential issue and the risk that group members may not respond well, are really training issues. They really go back to what I was talking about earlier, that group facilitators are not always adequately trained. So other than the disadvantage of co-facilitation being more costly, all these other disadvantages can be greatly limited by proper training in group facilitation. I hope you found this video useful. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to assist you.